There we go. And just like
Hello.
that, we're on the internet.
Welcome
Live
to
online.
everyone who joined us, I guess. And I'm sure we'll get a few more trickling in. Do we want to leave it a few minutes to allow some more people to join us, perhaps?
I think so. I think we could do some of those icebreaker questions now. What better to allow people to join than to figure out how many Wi-Fi routers there are in Devon?
Who's your one true pairing?
One true pairing, apparently.
Yeah.
The alternative to one-time password.
One true pairing.
One true pairing. I like it.
So apparently it's what was it? The fictional relationship that you think is best or whatever.
Yeah.
I was about to say Colin Firth, but that doesn't work for me on multiple levels. But he just came to mind.
I don't know. I think Colin works for me on quite a few levels.
Mr. Darcy?
Yeah.
Exactly.
As at this point, it's helpful to know that we are live and there are people watching. So we could just start before I dig myself into too much of a hole.
And also that this will be available on YouTube in perpetuity.
Oh,
So
great.
I look forward to playing that back to Dave.
You're already editing available.
Yeah. Cool. Hannah, please.
Would you like us to start, or do you want to talk about Colin Firth some more?
No, I'm going to say cool time on Colin Firth.
Awesome. Well, welcome everyone to ProductTank Exeter. We are delighted that you can join us. So for those of you who don't know what ProductTank is, it's a meetup designed to bring together all the fantastic people who work in product. It was originally founded in London, but now it is in over 200 cities worldwide. And we're delighted this evening to be joined by Kate Leto, who has over 25 years in experience in product management, org design and marketing, according to her site. And she has literally written the book on hiring product managers. So it seems like a pretty wise person to listen to about. So without further ado, is the easiest thing to hand straight over to Kate. And we'll let you speak. Although first I will say, please do leave comments on the video. Kate's got some interactive questions that she'll be asking you, and we'll be using Slido to get your answers to some polls, etc. But yeah, please drop us some messages in the comments. We would love to hear from you, and I'm sure Kate would too. And there is the link to join up on Slido, so please do get logged in now, and you'll see some polls appear throughout the evening.
Cool.
Kate, should we hand over to you?
Great. Thank you very much, Hannah. So I'm going to share my screen. So hopefully you won't see my very messy desktop. We're going to give it a go.
I'll only share it when you're ready, Kate.
Oh, okay. Cool. Whoops. Sorry, wrong one. Okay, I'm ready.
There we go. Okay.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you very much for having me here with you, albeit virtually tonight. It's always great to come back and be at a ProductTank. Before we get going, I do have a couple of poll questions that I'd like to ask. So if you want to go ahead and put the Slido up, we have 2 questions just to help me get an understanding of an idea of who's here and what are you looking for and how do you think about hiring?
So just in case people haven't used Slido before, clearly some people have because we've already got our first foot in, which is awesome. Either scan the QR code or go to slido.com and enter #PTX and then vote. It seems
should I stop sharing so we can see the results? Or
they can see them.
Okay.
I've put that up on screen. So that's
okay.
what people are voting on.
Cool. I'll need you to tell me what the results are because I can only see my screen.
Oh, sorry. Okay, so we're currently at 67% are looking for a product role and 33% hiring.
Okay.
But votes are still coming in. But at the moment, a healthy majority. Man, this is like the American election. This is so cool. It's
a little
except
bit
it's not
quicker
so
than that.
tight. This is a landslide win for looking for a product role. We can electoral college call it already, I'm sure.
Wow, that's much easier.
Oh, no. Okay, well, a few votes coming back the other way, hiring for a product role. In fact, it's getting, this is just like election night all over again. Damn you, Ohio, Florida. Okay. No, it's still, we're still looking like 67%, 30, now dropping down to 31% are. So yeah, looking for a product role seems to be the consistent winner.
Okay, cool. That's great. And then do you want to go to the next question?
Sure.
That is
Okay, so
more geared towards those that are hiring, but thinking about when you've hired product people in the past, what do you look for?
no votes yet.
Uh-oh.
People are clearly thinking.
I've stumped the group. Question 2.
Relevant
They're just
experience is
reading.
out of the game. Here we go. This is so exciting.
I feel like some of the people who are answering this question have read your book.
Oh, you know, kind of finding, whoops, I find that happening more and more, which is nice. But it does stilt the conversation a certain direction.
So clear winner at the moment for human skills.
Cool.
20%. Oh, we have now got technical mastery making a small appearance, but clear winners is human skills and then relevant experience. Nothing at the moment for background.
Okay, cool. That's great.
Shall we call it?
Yeah, let's call it. Let's say Pennsylvania came in early.
Sorry, I shouldn't make this
That's
political, but cool. Yeah. Okay.
All right. Are we good?
Yeah. So you're back on presenting now, Kate.
Okay, cool. So thanks very much for answering those, guys. It gives me a bit of perspective on who's with us tonight and how you're thinking about hiring coming into our conversation. And I was saying earlier to the organizers how much I enjoy coming to Product Tanks and talking, because it always does remind me of probably about 10 years ago in the very early days of Mind the Product and Product Tanks, sitting in basement pubs in East London with Martin and Jana and Simon and the other early members of the organization. And we were sitting there trying to figure out, like, what actually, how do we describe what we do, and what is it actually that we do? What is product management, and how do we do it? How do we do it? How do we do it well? How do we maybe even become successful at it? So that memory is actually where I started thinking about this talk. What is success in product management? And to actually get going with that thought, I went kind of big and broad, and I went to our friends at Google, of course, and I did a search for what is success, not just within product management, but success overall. And as you can imagine, I got a lot of results back. And one of them that caught my attention was this result that said job success is based on 85% soft skills and 15% hard skills. And I remembered seeing this before, a few years previously, and I thought it was kind of interesting, but I didn't really get into it too much. But this time, it really caught my attention, and I wanted to know more. I wanted to know if this data was real, or if it was pretty much fake news, and if it was real, where did it come from, and what were the questions asked, and how was the data actually packaged and described, and of course, was it statistically significant? So being the nerd that I am, there I am, I went down a really deep rabbit hole and found out that data is actually extrapolated from a report that was done by this man, Charles Riborg Mann, who in 1918 commissioned a report, or released a report that was commissioned by the Carnegie Foundation and various engineering societies in the US at the time, who asked him to look into whether or not the education that was on offer at universities across the US into engineering, an engineering degree, was actually preparing these young men, and it was young men at the time very much, for a successful career in engineering. So was their education, was their engineering education at university actually preparing them to be successful? So Charles said, sure, I can look into that, but first I need to understand what is success in engineering. So Charles commissioned or led this extensive research project and study that lasted about 4 years. And one of the initiatives that they did is they actually sent out 30,000 surveys, postal mail surveys, to engineers across the US and asked them to prioritize criteria for job success in engineering. And they gave them these 6 terms to prioritize. So they were a technique, which is what they were learning in school, their technical skills. Judgment, efficiency, character, which was the mental and moral qualities distinct to an individual. So things like, they had examples of like honesty and resilience and adaptability. And then knowledge and understanding of men. And understanding of men was kind of like our modern day management practices, you know, how to motivate people and how to set up processes to actually get work done. So Charles actually had a pretty good response rate to this survey. About 7,000 people responded, which is about 23%. And overwhelmingly, they said that character was the #1 criteria for success in engineering. And that technique, what they were learning at school, their focus on technical skills, came in last. So Charles validated this finding again and again and again throughout his research and study into answering these questions. And in 1918, he did put together this extensive report, which if you're a big nerd like me, you can still find it online and read it. And he said that if they are to really prepare these young engineers to have successful careers, that they needed to spend more time and find space within their curriculum to focus on personal development and focus on character development in students. And then Charles went on to recommend different experiments and different ways that they could actually play with this and try to work it into their curriculum. So flash forward 102 years. Here we are in the fabulous year of 2020. And I tried really, really hard to find out what was, or if there was any long-term impact of Charles's study on engineering and the engineering community and their thinking on success. And to be honest, I couldn't find a lot. The few things that I did find said that there was a lot of, at the time, 1918, World War I was coming to an end. So his report kind of got lost in the shuffle and the chaos of the times. However, it did lay this foundation for thinking about personal development and character and what does it mean to really be successful as an engineer, that they still discuss and talk about and try to focus on today within that engineering community. And of course, it's laid this broader foundation as well to conversations that, you know, we're even having tonight, albeit with slightly different vocabulary. So while Charles talked about personal development and character in 1918, a few years later, it was described more as social intelligence, you know, this kind of X factor or a secret sauce to actually being successful, be it personally or professionally. The creator or the, I don't know if I want to use inventor, but the person who coined the term social intelligence said that in order to be successful personally or professionally, you need to have social intelligence, which was like being able to read somebody like a book. You would just know them inside and out. You'd be able to read them. You'd be able to be successful because of that. In the late 60s and early 70s, we started to actually hear the term soft skills, which was mentioned in that survey result that I started out with. Soft skills, the term actually comes from the US Army, believe it or not. It was first mentioned in a military training manual where the military was trying to define the type of skills that their personnel needed in order to be successful. And they said, when you're working with hard things like equipment, then you have hard skills. When you're working with non-hard things, when you're working with people, and they also said paper, you have soft skills, and you need to have both. And they went on to say that it's easy to define hard skills. It's really hard to define soft skills. And I think in many ways we still struggle with that today. And then in the 80s, we started hearing about this concept of emotional intelligence that became much more popular in 1995 by a book by a man named Daniel Goleman. And his hypothesis, his argument was that EQ is more important than IQ. EQ being your measurement of your emotional intelligence, which is your emotional quotient, was more important in attaining success, be it personally or professionally, than IQ. And Goleman at the time was a clinical psychologist at Harvard and a scientific journalist at the New York Times. And his conversations and his arguments and his research really popularized this term and this thinking. In the last few years, the term has changed slightly again into this concept of human skills. The World Economic Forum actually, in their Future of Jobs reports just a few years ago, said that human skills, defined as creativity, originality, initiative, critical thinking, persuasion, negotiation, flexibility, emotional intelligence, leadership, all of these things were crucial to the work that we would be doing over the next few years. And that by 2020, according to the report from just a few years ago, employers, when they were interviewing, they would be looking for human skills over technical skills. So all of this is well and good, but I want to dive into just one of these topics, particularly one of the human skills, and that's emotional intelligence. It's something that I think is a little more common in our vernacular. Not that some of the other terms aren't, but it's also something that has a lot of research behind it to show the benefits of emotional intelligence in the work that we do. So emotional intelligence, just to have a common definition, is the ability to recognize, understand, and manage our own emotions, and recognize, understand, and influence the emotions of others. And Goleman, the guy who wrote that book that I mentioned from 1995, defined it as 4 competencies. So self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship management. And within these competencies, there are different skills that we've probably heard about. So self-awareness, adaptability, empathy, teamwork, coaching and mentoring, conflict management, leadership, and influence. These are all different emotional intelligence skills. And research does show that people and teams and organizations with higher levels of emotional intelligence tend to fare better in various ways than people in teams and organizations with lower levels of emotional intelligence. So, for example, a study done a few years ago by a group called Talent Smart found that people with higher levels of EQ actually make more money a year than people in similar positions with lower levels of EQ. And at the time, it equated to about $29,000 a year more for the people with higher levels of EQ, which broke down to about 1,300 points, $1,300 per point. So looking to make some more money, you have a place to start working, I suppose, working on building your EQ. And also teams with high self-awareness, and believe it or not, teams can have high self-awareness, actually make decisions better, they coordinate better, and they deal with conflict better. They are higher performing teams. So basically, emotional intelligence and these human skills overall are the basis of a host of critical skills. And they're things that we use every day, and they influence what we say and how we act. But yet, when I take a look at our product community, what I see us talking about and writing about and thinking about and interviewing for are what I call more technical skills. So focusing on things like, how do we build a great roadmap? How do we make sure we have solid OKRs? How do we do A/B testing or multivariate testing? How do we build an MVP or do some great prototype building and testing as well? And it's not that these things aren't important, because these are the foundations of our product world, right? These are the things I talked about quite often in that pub in East London with other early members of ProductTank. They provide us a common vocabulary, and they really help define what we do. However, I think we sometimes miss the boat and don't realize that what we do is powered by how we do it. There is a direct relationship between something like a technical skill like building a roadmap and human skills like self-awareness, because with self-awareness, when you're building a roadmap, you'll be able to maybe raise your hand and realize that something that you're pushing for on that roadmap might be out of your own best interest, or the best interest and not the best interest of your team or of your organization. And a human skill like influence will help with those really challenging stakeholders that you need to bring along with you to build this roadmap, or leadership skills that'll be able to help you bring your team along with you and seeing and putting together the vision you have in mind for the roadmap. And of course, conflict resolution skills, because there's always going to be some kind of conflict when it comes to putting together something as foundational as a roadmap. So what? So what, in my mind, is that I think our community needs to really reframe how we think of success and realize that we've had perhaps a over-indexing and over-focus on technical skills and what we do, and maybe to the detriment of development and discussion and consideration of human skills, how we do it. And so what I'm looking to do is to actually not, and what I'm asking people to do, and what I'm working with organizations to do, is to not forgetting technical skills completely, because like I said, that's essential, that's foundational, that's what we do, but to actually make more space and room within our practice of product management to talk about human skills and to think about how we can bring them into our organizations and our teams. And one of the best ways of doing that, I think, is by taking a look at how we hire, how we think about hiring, how we think about the roles that we're putting together, how we interview, and how we can incorporate human skills into that whole process can make a big change in our team dynamics, and our broader organization. So what I'm going to do next is talk to you about 3 different things that you can do to hire for human skills and build what I call your product EQ. But before I do that, just to make sure you're all still there, let's do the next poll question, please.
Sorry, I'm just pulling it up now. Bear with me 1 second. Okay. I think it's this. I hope it's this. Is this right? What's the first thing you do when you get the green light to hire a new product person?
That is it.
So if you'd gone to make a coffee,
then we've caught you out.
timing. Yeah, there's no interval here. Okay, votes are coming in.
Cool.
Sorry, it's moving quite quickly. So me reading it out all the time is probably not that helpful. But at the moment, the leader is talk to my network to see who they recommend for the role.
Okay.
But it's now equal with talk to my team and stakeholders about must-have and nice-to-haves for the role.
Okay.
Which is now taking a lead. I feel like John McCririck here. Which is an obscure reference to anyone who's not from the UK. Yeah, it's staying in the lead, 67 to 33. No one has said, look around at other companies that are hiring and reformat their job descriptions for your use.
Wow. Okay, cool.
Cool. You happy with that? So
yeah,
63% to 38 say, talk to my team and stakeholders about must-have and nice-to-haves for the role.
Okay, cool. Thank you very much. So, perfectly ties into, funny enough, what we're going to talk about next, or the first thing that you can do to actually look to hire for human skills and build that product EQ is build a role that matters. And it is interesting because I remember when I was like a young hustling head of product or a senior product manager, and I would get a green light to hire somebody. It was like Christmas Day. It's like, oh, I can bring somebody in and they can do the stuff I don't want to do. And I can move on and do better, cooler things. And I would remember sitting down, and actually I would start by taking a look at, this is me in the olden days, taking a look at what other people were posting, because it was always interesting to see how industry leaders like a Google or an Amazon or somebody was describing the product role and describing what they were looking for. And I didn't really write the job description. I more cut and pasted things, if memory serves. And I wasn't alone, because I found this recent survey that said that, well, 80% of people think that a job description is important. About 50% of us actually cut and paste job descriptions. And when I did put them together and shared them with my teammates and stakeholders, they usually look something like this: must-haves and nice-to-haves. And the must-haves, when you take a look at them, they're very much our technical skills, proven work experience, proven track record, proven ability to develop product and marketing strategies. Proven track record to manage a product throughout its entire life cycle, a solid technical background. And this is actually from a job description that I recently found. So I didn't make this up. This is from an e-commerce product manager job description. And if this is your company, no judgment. Thank you for the learning opportunity. No names will be mentioned. But what strikes me when I look at something like this, must-haves being, technical skills at the top, and there's the language used around them, proven, proven, proven. You're asking for an awful lot for somebody coming in as an e-commerce product manager. And you're not really describing an environment or an organization or a team where somebody's going to be able to learn, because you're looking for everything to be proven and 100% taken care of and understood and known from the word go. And then I go down and look at nice-to-haves, which usually are our human skills, right? And I would say the vast majority of nice-to-haves start with this line, comfortable with ambiguity, for product people especially. Comfortable with ambiguity, remaining unfazed when having to do work, that and something that you've never experienced before or been exposed to before. So comfortable with ambiguity. And then this job description went on to say you need to be a natural born leader, which always gets me, because I don't know a lot of people, coming out of the womb ready to lead, no training, no reading, no study, no nothing, just ready to go. And you also, according to this job description, need to be anti-fragile. So when I look at job descriptions like this and formatted in this very traditional must-have technical skills, nice-to-have human skills, I get a bit frustrated, because I think what they're actually looking for is something that doesn't exist. Proven, 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 anti-fragile, natural-born leader. In my mind, what they're really looking for is a unicorn. This is a fantastical beast. And this job description wasn't alone in meeting that criteria. So instead of automatically talking to your stakeholders and team members and just talking about must-haves and nice-to-haves, what I encourage people to do is to use this role canvas that I've created that's based on 4 questions, really simplistic seeming questions. What's the purpose of the role? And the purpose is not the job title, but why does the role actually exist? What are the accountabilities associated with the role? What are the goals or the outcomes that they'll be working towards? And then what are the human skills and the technical skills that this role is going to need in order to achieve their accountabilities? And the human skills, what I encourage people to do is, obviously learn about these human skills, learn more about leadership, learn more about conflict resolution, influence, adaptability, things like that, and then prioritize them. What some of my clients started out doing in the beginning when we used the role canvas is they would just list emotional intelligence. And as we all know, that's a big term, and there's a lot that goes within that. You've seen some of the skills that I mentioned earlier. This is the time to get to know them and actually list them out. And the same goes for the technical skills, of course. So that is one way that we can start to integrate and look for human skills into our hiring process. Stop just jumping to must-haves and nice-to-haves and really focus on these 4 basic questions that include human skills and technical skills. So time for a second. This is my open-ended question. So we're going to respond to this one in a slightly different way. And I'll let Dave tell you how. But the question I'd like you to respond to is, what's the worst interview question you've been asked?
So we're going to keep this really simple. Please just respond in the YouTube chat with the worst interview question you've ever been asked. Unfortunately, no voting on this one, but I'm sure we'll all enjoy seeing them all. So yeah, I know we were talking beforehand about a few gems, so we know they're out there. And now we wait.
Now we wait. I don't think people realize there'd be so much audience participation tonight, huh?
Yeah, we're making you work tonight.
I know. Sorry, guys.
At this rate, is everyone saying they've never been asked a bad interview question? I can't believe that.
Well, maybe you guys could mention a few of the ones you were talking about earlier to get the ball rolling.
That's true. I'll add Tor back in. Tor, you had one. You're currently, if I unmute you, can you talk? No. Thank you, Emily. You're still muted, Tor, but we've got our first one there. Describe yourself in a sentence.
That's awkward. I'll share one of the other ones I remember hearing before, and it was for a product management job, how to build a new kind of watch. Somebody was asked that at a product management interview that had nothing to do with watches or physical products, actually.
I was asked to design a vending machine for the blind.
And you weren't working on, and the product you were interviewing for had nothing to do with either of those.
No, nothing to do with that at all. I was also asked to come up with as many different uses for a traffic cone as I can think of. And I was asked to estimate the number of Wi-Fi routers in the US. Nice.
all gems.
Yes. Oh, and also design a social media strategy for a hospital.
Say that again?
Design a social media strategy for a hospital.
In an interview, you got asked that.
I did.
And that, I assume the role had nothing to do with hospitals or?
Nope.
Nope. Always good. It amazes me how the type of questions we come up with for interviews. Is there anything else coming in, Dave, or should we move on?
So yeah, we've had a few. So, are you an emotional person?
Oh.
I think you saw the jam or cream one, but which goes first, the jam or the cream?
I did.
The hire was from Devon.
Right.
And last one from Lisa, a case study you just know is a problem they haven't been able to solve yet, and they're just looking to tap your ideas for free. Right.
Yeah. I've also heard quite often people are asked to do, some work or extensive work, when they're not obviously getting paid for it and things like that. There's the whole kind of debate around projects associated with interviewing. And one other guy I know was asked, can you tell us about the biggest project that you've led? And it was a competitor. So they were looking for like insight and kind of what's going on with my competitor. How can I find out more about what they're up to? So it can be a bit shady, even with interview questions.
Seems that way.
All right. Should I go on?
Yeah, carry on. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, guys. So not surprisingly, the second thing that I'd like to talk about and how we can kind of change how we hire and hire for our human skills is to prepare some meaningful questions. So when I was, again, a younger hustling head of product, I would also, go to do a little bit of research about questions that Google would ask or Amazon would ask, and I'd incorporate that into my my interview. And I think I'm like that I'm so clever And I'm going to just get this candidate with my really hard questions. And there would be things like, why do you think, who do you think, I'm sorry, which do you think has more advertising potential in Boston, a flower shop or a funeral home? And that was for a product management interview again. Or design an evacuation plan for the building. Sounds kind of similar to what you were asked, Thor. So these questions, I do understand in that perhaps they are actually trying to see if this candidate can work with ambiguity and answer that nice to have requirement. But at the end of the day, they don't really tell you much about the person, what they can bring to your organization. So instead of asking these type of brain teaser questions or focusing maybe only on technical skill questions, I encourage people to start asking behavioral interview questions. And behavioral interview questions help us understand how someone has behaved in the past by asking them about a work-related scenario and how they may behave in the future unless they express some desire or want to change their behavior. So for example, let's say you are looking to hire somebody who has some good conflict resolution skills. Let's say that there's been a lot of conflict or tension on your team recently. So you'd like to find somebody who can deal with conflict and manage it well. So you ask them a very simple question. Tell me about a time when you suggested something that someone disagreed with you. What did you say? How did you handle the situation? So this is a very reality-based question about something that has happened in a work-related scenario in the past that can help you understand how somebody behaved and how that behavior actually impacted other people within the organization and how they reflect on that behavior now, if they'd want to change it or not. Another example, in conflict resolution. Have you ever encountered someone at work who is unreasonable? What did you say? Like, these are just, we're always working with people that we feel are unreasonable. It happens all the time. So instead of asking questions that are meant to trick or find clarity, to find how somebody deals with ambiguity, why not ask a question that will help you understand the human skills somebody does have and how they're reflected in behavior? And it's interesting because the onus in asking behavioral interview questions is actually, by and large, on the interviewer, the person asking the question, because it's up to you to listen to the narrative, to listen to the story that you're being told, and probe and nudge into that response to a point where you can make something seemingly intangible, like conflict resolution, tangible. So, for example, is that person actually, would they engage in conflict according to the story they're telling you or not? If they do engage, how would they engage? Would they want to make one person the winner or one person the loser, or would they want everybody to feel like they win? And how would these responses, how would these behaviors work with your organization and work with your team? And what I've just mentioned here I've just shown two simple questions around conflict resolution. And if you really are interested in building out your behavioral interview skills, I encourage you to pick up this book called The EQ Interview, where there's questions for every type of emotional intelligence skill and human skill that you can dig into and incorporate into your interview prep. So one last poll for the night.
Okay, here we go. Going live now, and I will put it on screen too. What do you do once the candidate has accepted your offer? Sorry, that's my bad. I think I might have copied that incorrectly. Take the candidate out for a virtual drink, order their laptop and get tech stack prepared. Think about how to onboard virtually or something else. And if you vote for something else, please put what that something else is in the comments on YouTube. So.
And seeing that we have a lot of folks looking for jobs as well, what would you like to have happen? Do you want to go out for a virtual drink? Do you want to just think about onboarding? What would you like to see?
So overwhelmingly, people are saying think about how to onboard virtually. There's a few votes for everything else, but yeah, that's the standout so far.
Okay. Cool.
Get your laptop and tech stuff set up is now second. I haven't had any comments yet about the something else or things candidates would like to see. But yeah, the main thing is how to think about how to onboard virtually at the moment.
Okay, cool. Thank you. So I'm going to encourage we do something a little bit different at this point, and that's not thinking right away about onboarding, but actually realizing that hiring doesn't just stop at the offer, and it's not the natural next step isn't to just focus on onboarding. It's looking a bit further down the line. So this is a very traditional hiring process that actually one of my clients drew out for me when they were describing how they think about hiring and what their flow is like. You start with the job description and you end with the offer. And I think one of the things that we lose track of and we don't consider is that hiring, this whole process, is actually an opportunity and an agent for change within our organization. So it's an opportunity to actually apply continuous learning methodology. We need to be able to actually build in reflection points into our hiring process, and one of them needs to be set up for 6 months, maybe 9 months down the line once somebody is brought in and hired. And that's a retrospective that I call the role retro. So the role retro is basically you bring together the hiring team, you bring together the stakeholders involved, you bring along the person that you hired, and you take a look at that role canvas and you ask yourselves the question of, did we describe this role right? Were we right in kind of thinking about what the accountabilities would be? What is the purpose of the role? What are the skills that everyone needs, or that the candidate and now the employee needs to actually be successful? And evaluate really the role that you created, and spend that time reflecting on what did you do well, what did you get right, what did you not get right, and how can you make change? And this retro is about the role. It is not about the person. It's not a performance review. It's not a personal development. It's not a personal development session. It's taking a look at the role itself and the hiring decision that was made, and how that came about, the process that you actually put in place to create that hiring decision. I also encourage organizations to actually put some kind of metric behind this. And I use this metric called the hiring batting average, that was introduced by the CEO, by Jack Welch, the CEO at GE, who was very into supporting his people and encouraging really good hiring decisions. So what he would do is he would have something similar to a role retro a year after the role was filled and someone new came on board, and he'd actually see if they made a good hiring decision or not based on the input from the person who joined and filled that role and based on the input from everyone else involved. So he found a way to incentivize good hiring decisions. And I think that's something that we need to work into our process as well. And what we'll find is that we're actually building a learning loop, and we can build continuous learning through hiring. And doing these different steps. And it's quite similar to our build, measure, learn that we see in other kind of technical skill sides of product management. But it's building the role that matters. It's evaluating your EQ and your human skills in interviews. And it's learning from the whole process through your role retros. But I guess the one thing that I want to leave you with is the message that if you are going to try to hire somebody for EQ and human skills, that you need to have it yourself, because it's one of those things that if you don't have it, you can't see it. So the real secret sauce in making hiring different and changing how you hire and making hiring an agent of change, it comes from you, and it comes from learning these different human skills. And learning the skills, building the skills is something anyone can do. It may not happen as quickly as learning a new strategy framework or learning how to do OKRs. It's going to take time and dedication and commitment, but it's completely possible. And I talk much more about it in the book. As Hannah had mentioned in the beginning, I have a new book out from Sense and Respond Press called Hiring Product Managers, Using Product EQ to Go Beyond Culture and Skills. And it's received some nice reviews. So I hope you have a chance to pick it up and give it a read. That's it for me. Please keep in touch. I'm going to stop screen sharing.
Thanks ever so much, Kate. I'm going to add people back in. And we do have some questions. In fact, I wonder if I can put them up on the screen while I figure that out.
Hey, good to see faces again.
Oh, yeah, it's probably nicer, actually.
We can read out the questions, I think.
We can read them out, can't we? Hannah, do you want to do the top question?
I shall. Well, I mean, the top question, thanks for giving me that one, is obviously the most important you're going to receive this evening, which is, would you rather fight 100 Joe Biden-sized Donald Trumps or 100 Donald Trump-sized Joe Bidens?
So is that an interview question?
I don't think so. It came up before the interview questions. I think it was Dave's fault for making it political earlier.
Oh, Dave. So I'm sorry. Again.
Feel free to skip over that question if you don't.
Yeah, okay. I appreciate it. I'd probably love to answer it, but I kind of missed it. I heard Joe Biden and I just started giggling.
Oh, it was about Joe Biden. Would you rather fight 100 Joe Biden-sized Donald Trumps or 100 Donald Trump-sized Joe Bidens?
I don't want to fight anybody.
We're
going to unify. We're going to bring unity to the world again.
I think that's a good answer.
Yeah.
Tor, do you want to take the next one?
Once I remember how to unmute, yes. Okay. So the next question, which is slightly more on topic, how, as a candidate, do you effectively communicate EQ and human skills through your CV and through the interview process?
I think through the interview process and the questions that are asked, actually, it's an opportunity to think about your human skills, to think about, like, if it's self-awareness, if it's conflict resolution, whatever it might be, and to actually prepare answers to questions around behavioral interview questions, because they are coming up more and more and more from what I'm seeing in product management interviews. So prep responses. Think about a time where, how did you react to working with somebody who's unreasonable? How did you react when somebody didn't agree with you? Some of these other kind of behavior-based scenarios, and practice the story. Think about it, reflect on it. And it is the same as preparing for any kind of what's your greatest achievement in your existing role, or where do you want to be in 5 years kind of answer. We need to make these foundational and status quo questions to think about and stories to tell, thinking of it more as a narrative about that reflects who you are and how you would behave and bring these human skills to your organization. So that's that part of it. How you bring it into your CV, it is a challenge. It's something I've been working with various clients on recently in kind of a coaching way. And it's something that I think is, again, a bit of a storytelling example. I've had a few clients that will talk about some of their achievements, but also work into their things like coaching and mentoring people that on their teams, right? Or working with challenging stakeholders and explaining a little bit more about how they do that, making it just another bullet point on their CV. So they kind of rethink the CV from beginning to end. And instead of putting that, I don't know if you guys still do this, but I see a lot of CVs that at the very top have this one kind of bold statement that says, like, basically like, I've changed my company and I've saved the world and I've beat all of my OKRs and I did it with one hand tied behind my back. So, one of the first things you can do is take that off, because that's also feeding that beast of fantasy, and positioning yourself as a unicorn. So you're creating expectations for technical skills and human skills that probably aren't real. So it's making your CV more of a reflection of the actual work you've done, and talking about your team and working with your team and working with people that you manage in a different sort of way. But I think that's a great question. I'm actually working on a format and a template for that with some of my clients that I'm going to share on LinkedIn and on my blog later on. So good question.
Cool. So the next one, as a PM strong on EQ and learning, how do you convince companies to give you a chance when you don't have that strong tech background, in quotes, but know you'll learn?
You know what? I think some organizations are going to look for the learning, and are going to look for the strong EQ. And some organizations right now are going to be more occupied with the technical skills and maybe your pedigree, so where you went to school, or maybe your social networks, who you know and who referred you to the role. That's the part of hiring that I think isn't working, and it's broken, and it's totally messed up. But not every organization accepts that yet and sees that yet. So I think one of the ways of actually finding an organization that is going to work well for you is that they're going to be looking for learning skills and learning mindset. And they're going to be looking for people with higher levels of EQ, or at least a level where you want to learn more. So I would almost turn it around and think of it as almost a criteria on your side, that you want to find an organization that has that in their culture. They want to look for learners, and they want to have learners in the organization, and they want to have people with EQ in the organization, because you're not always going to be able to convince everyone who may not be ready for that perspective that that's more important.
Cool. We've got a really interesting question, actually. Do people tend to overestimate their own EQ, a bit like how most people think they're above average driver?
Absolutely. Or like a good answer, especially when we used to go to discos and such late at night. I saw this great study that said that it was on self-awareness, and self-awareness is very much like the foundational human skill. Right? Because through self-awareness, we can learn so much about ourselves and learn about how we impact other people and how we impact the world, and how other people see us. But anyway, so it's like self-awareness is a good place to start if you want to work on building up your human skills and your EQ. And the study, I'm going to get the numbers wrong, but think of the proportions, right? The study said that it was it was a study of people at about 17,000 organizations around the world. And the vast majority of them, I think it was like 70%, said they had high self-awareness. And when they broke down the numbers, it was actually something like 19% of women actually scored high in self-awareness and 17% of men. There was a difference there. But yeah, we definitely have a tendency to think that to overinflate our expectations and understanding of our own emotional intelligence, our self-awareness, and all of these skills. And it's very interesting to see what the studies and the research actually finds.
Great. So the next question is one I'm definitely curious about myself, as it's a topic that we're talking about a lot at the moment. What's your take on assignments or take-home exercises? Do you think they're a good mechanism? Are they an opportunity to explore or reveal sort of soft skills or human skills as well as IQ, or are they just a waste of time?
It's hard to say. I was on a panel last week where we talked about this quite a bit as well. And it doesn't feel like there's like a universal answer to that question. I do think one of the things I've seen quite a bit is that some organizations expect a lot from their assignments. And people end up spending a lot of time on them. Perhaps it might be one of those things where a hiring manager might think like, oh, this will take them 4 hours to do, and that's fine. But actually, when somebody gets home and starts doing it, and the pressure and the stress of wanting to really do a good job with it, they could spend days, you know? And then you do get into a situation of, should I be paying somebody to spend this much time on something? How might that work? So actually, one of the things that I've seen happen more and more with organizations that do these take-home assignments, I think what they're trying to see is how the person thinks, how they would handle a real-world, real-world situation that they would experience as a member of a team and an organization, and I get that. So I think there can be a place with it. I think it needs to be quite compact, though, and there needs to be boundaries around it. And I think that's hard for organizations to do because, again, they'd have to sit down and think about it and really, really focus on it. And I think a lot of times we don't put that much time and energy into the hiring process. But what I've also seen organizations start to do is shadowing. So having somebody come in, having the candidate that you're really interested in come in and shadow somebody else on the team or another product manager on another team to see how they work and have a really good conversation of, what did you see? Did you notice something that, do you do it differently? How would you approach that? It's almost kind of a real time, it's less of an interview, but more of like a conversation and a different way to get to know you. Almost kind of like, I've seen some developer tests where there's pair programming, right? It's kind of bringing that into a product management arena. So I kind of like the idea of, if we are going to do some kind of project or a test or whatever we want to call it, to make it just a small piece of the overall experience and the overall hiring process. And I really like this idea of bringing in somebody to shadow you for a day or a half a day, and see what that experience is like, and learn from a conversation there. What did you see? What did you learn? How do you do it? Would you do it differently? Do you do it differently? It's an interesting give and take that way.
Just to follow up on that, and I'm gutted because I want to ask the next question, but how do you do that shadowing? I just noticed the way you talked about come in, it's very much kind of the language of, oh, we're all in a building, right? And to make that connection and to just passively observe is perhaps slightly easier. Is it maybe easier? Does it have to be in person, or could you say actually it's no problem if you're joining from Sweden? Just it doesn't matter. You can come in and sit in an hour roadmap review or something and just see what it's like.
Sit in our planning session, and that way it's somewhat easier to be an observer, isn't it? Versus having, person X, just let's call him Joe, having Joe sit there and in the room and not really participating. It is a bit easier that way when you're on Zoom or whatever it might be, for them to be able to kind of lurk and listen and for you to have a conversation afterwards. And maybe that way you're able to actually break it up. So instead of just a half day, one day, you can invite them to a couple of different meetings and a couple of different sessions and getting different perspectives.
It does, beg the question, whether the pandemic and the fact that so many more people are now doing remote so much more could actually change the hiring process quite a bit, couldn't it? Like in a way where previously to say, can you come to our office for an hour meeting makes no sense. Now you could maybe drop into an interview process more of that. Actually, we'd like you to join this, but you absolutely don't have to come. Just come and participate from wherever you are.
Yeah, completely. I mean, it's a lot of the organizations I've been working with who are hiring, or building products and services like, you guys are as well, that they're online, they're global, right? So our market is everywhere. And it does make it easier to have remote workers in different countries, in different time zones. And it really opens up the base of opportunity for the person looking for a job and also for the company hiring, and that they can be more focused on what are we really looking for. And it just widens the population and the opportunity to find what you need and also to find the company that you'd like.
Absolutely.
Shall I grab the next question then?
Yeah, go for it.
Cool. So we've got a great question from Emily, actually, which is, what's a human skill that you've had to learn, and how?
Gosh, just about all of them. So I started focusing on human skills probably about 10 years ago in my work, because I found as a head of product, I felt like I was pretty good at the technical stuff, and I was really focused on learning more and more and more. But where I started to realize I was hitting my head and just getting frustrated was more on the human side. And I did, I couldn't put it in that context then. I didn't have those words at all. But I started working with a coach probably about 10 years ago. And from that, started to learn about, all the things that were holding me back and kind of moving to a next level. And that they were more related to things like, how self-aware I am and how I present myself in an organization or in a meeting, and how I relate to my teammates and how they relate to me. And resilience is a big one, because as product people, we're constantly going up and down and all over the place. So realizing that resilience doesn't mean that you've got to be up all the time, but it means that you're on a kind of a smooth, you've got like a marathon, not a sprint mentality going on. So I actually say this in the back of my book. We usually have acknowledgments in the back of the book. And I acknowledge my coach, who's helped me figure all of this out and learn about it. It's not something that happens quickly or easily, but it's something that has such a lifespan and durability. I've started to hear human skills described as durable skills and technical skills described as perishable skills, because we need to learn new things all the time on the technical side, whereas these human skills are longer lasting, and they're going to be with me, for years and years and years, hopefully, and I'll keep building them and keep getting better at them. So, so I would say, all of them, and I'm still working on them, but that's the beauty of it.
I'm going to go off script slightly and just riff on that for a moment, because I think we talked a lot about hiring. We talked about looking for EQ when you're hiring, but sometimes if you're leading teams, you will join a new business and you'll inherit a team
right.
you didn't necessarily hire. And I think one of the risks, if you like, in talking about EQ or referring to EQ as analogous to IQ is it implies that it's some fixed number that is stamped on someone's forehead, as it were. So do you believe you can coach EQ? And if so, how do you do that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of science and research behind that as well. You can build EQ, you can learn it, and you can grow it. It's a different part of the brain than learning technical skills. And I won't get into the names because at this point, I'll probably get them wrong. But it's a different kind of connector. And basically, you have to unlearn specific behaviors and beliefs and attitudes. And you have to practice new ones, and you have to build up that skill. But it's completely possible. A lot of the research done by Daniel Goleman, who wrote that book that I referred to in 1995, he's done extensive research into the ability to actually grow these skills. And you do it in a number of ways. You could do what I did and work with a coach. You could, if coaching is not available to you financially or for whatever reason, you can work with a peer even. I see a lot of peer coaching going on where two people are really committed to improving some human skill, self-awareness or conflict resolution or whatever it might be. And they kind of hold each other accountable to working towards that. You identify different ways that you can build the practice by taking a look at, as they ask in the behavioral interview questions, how did you behave maybe today when somebody didn't agree with what you said? And how would you want to do that differently? And you just keep building and practicing. It takes time and it takes a lot of commitment, but it is completely feasible. It's just activating this different part of your brain.
Thank goodness that's the case, or else we'd all be a bit screwed, wouldn't we?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I wouldn't have much to talk about.
So there's a couple of questions around a kind of similar theme. So one from Ines. in YouTube who says, naturally, other people will be interviewing the candidate. So how do you manage this interaction, especially if they're not into this kind of topic, this way of thinking? And similar one that I was interested. So, if you're a candidate meeting multiple people, how do you calibrate amongst all the interviewers what soft skills look like? Because introspective and thought to one person might be very quiet and reserved and hard to work with to someone else, for example. How do you calibrate them?
Yeah, I actually, in my book, I talk about having calibration sessions as part of the hiring process. And they're weekly, bi-weekly, whatever it needs to be, gatherings amongst the hiring team to, take a look at that role canvas that you put together. And actually, as you do your first pass and you start to think about what questions are we going to ask to help us understand if this candidate has these human and technical skills. And it is it's a working session to think about those questions. And then you will find some people are more interested and inclined to go with the human skills questions, and some are more inclined to go with technical skill questions. And that's fine. That's totally cool, as long as they're covered, right? And it is best to have these type of calibration sessions to kind of keep everybody organized, because you also don't want 5 people asking the same question. That might look a little funny. And the trick, though, is to keep having the calibration sessions, because what you'll become aware of is that maybe the questions that you're asking aren't quite the right ones. You're not getting to what you really need. So how can you change those questions? And maybe you'll even find out after, as you're meeting people, that the people that are coming in don't even really reflect the skills that you think you need, or there's been a change in the skills that you need. So you can go back and update your role canvas and a job description that comes out of that. So it's important to actually integrate this idea of continuous learning through calibration sessions into your hiring process, and make it much more cyclical instead of that linear process of we start and we end. In actuality, just like anything else we do with products, it's more of a loop, and calibrating along the way is crucial.
Thank you. I'm going to add Ben, who I think has a question.
Cool. So down to do product ops teams have a role to play here? Have you seen any product ops teams get involved in the hiring people development?
Yeah, I don't see why not. If the role that you're hiring is going to be working closely with product ops in one way or another, there's no reason why product ops wouldn't be involved in a hiring team. Yeah. I think that, especially in putting together that role canvas in the very beginning, I think I forgot to mention this in the talk, but that role canvas, you can do it on your own, initially to get going, or you can do it in a workshop with your group or with your team, the hiring team, and the stakeholders involved and the recruiters involved. And you can do it virtually even. You can go to my website and download the role canvas, and you can all fill it out in a Zoom call and have a workshop session. And doing that collaboratively brings more kind of awareness to what the needs are and what you're looking for. So there's more alignment before you even start the whole writing of a job description and interviewing on, what everybody on that hiring team thinks that role should be.
We've got a question from Mike on the YouTube comments as well. It's quite a specific one. I need someone to build a product set from a very fast changing environment in a business that provides solutions, including hardware as well as software. Have you got any ideas for good questions to open this up?
That is very specific. Is there any way that Mike and I could chat offline? Because I think it'd be hard to come up right on the spot with the exact questions that you would need for that.
Perhaps we can simplify it a little bit to say, have you got any ideas for questions that you could ask in a fast-paced environment?
Fast-paced environment. So I would be looking at questions again around, with fast-paced environments, mistakes are going to be made, right? And I think you need to expect to build a culture where that needs to be acceptable from leadership as well as kind of the people that are doing the work. So fast-paced environment, I would think that conflict resolution, again, would be really important. So some of those questions I mentioned earlier. And I would think things like self-awareness would be really important. So that can be kind of similar to what I mentioned before, but I think there's probably more specific self-awareness questions like even how did you handle or how did you respond to how do you respond to actually making decisions really quickly and on the fly? Something like that might be interesting in fast-paced organizations. And again, a lot of people, it's really interesting because a lot of fast-paced environments, organizations think they're fast-paced, but sometimes, it's probably no different than any other organization. But I don't know all the details on that one. But I would say looking for people that can deal with conflict well, looking for people that can be self-aware enough to be able to make decisions really quickly, because with self-awareness, that's like your moral compass, That's where you're going to be able to direct on whether or not how to make certain decisions on a product, if it's ethical, if it's not, if it's something that's in your own interest or somebody else's interest. So I think that might come into play quite a bit. If you pick up the book that I recommended and mentioned, the EQ interview, you're going to find a whole load of questions in there to help with that specific situation.
Have you found do you have any kind of particular go-to questions that you found consistently carry strong signal?
No, I really haven't. I'll be honest. I keep changing questions all the time. Because, well, for many reasons. One, the roles are always different. As we all know, within product management, there's really not one way to describe what we do. And there's never going to be like a universal job description or role canvas. So what we look for changes pretty dramatically when it comes to the human skill side, I'd say, and role to role. So I don't have like one go-to. I just kind of keep iterating and playing with them.
Cool.
I had a quick question on, I hope you haven't answered this before, but on coaching from a product person's perspective, if you're looking, obviously that's a really good way to build self-awareness. And where would you point people
for coaching
to get started? Sorry?
Yeah, for coaching and product management?
Yeah.
There are a lot of coaches out there. And I think it's a bit, Thor's smiling because he was doing coaching for a while as well. I think it's the term coaching and product management is really interesting because there are so many different types of coaches, right? So there's discovery coaches, there's agile coaches, of course. There's more competency-based coaches. There's more human skills-based coaches. There's just like, there's a coach for everything you're looking for. So I think I'd start out with kind of what kind of coach what kind of help are you looking for? Is it a specific competency or is it more of a leadership space that you want to explore? And then I'd probably look around at some of the different, there's so much content out there about coaching and within product management these days, and do some looking around and do some asking around. I know I've started to find more and more people who say they're doing coaching for product people, but before you go with one, please have a lot of different conversations, because the one thing that's really important with coaching is finding somebody that you can get along with and have a good conversation with. But also somebody who really has experience, because I've seen some product coaches or some folks say they're product coaches and they've got maybe 2 years of experience, and maybe that'll work for what you're looking for. But just do some due diligence and talk to a bunch of different coaches, and don't be worried about that, because I think that's how you find really what you're looking for. And try to actually think ahead of time. One of the first questions I ask people when they come to me and they want to talk about coaching is, what's the change you're looking to make, or what are the outcomes you're looking to get out of coaching? So think about some of that stuff ahead of time, and that will help you find the coach that I think is a good fit for you.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Can I just follow up on that? Do you think all product managers should be looking for coaching at some point in their career? To use the analogy of athletes, right? Athletes, especially top tier athletes, they're constantly getting coached, and so is that an expectation that we all should have coaches? I mean, obviously, hopefully your line manager is working with you on that, but even on top of that, should it become more normalized that everyone is, if they're not always seeing a coach, like seeing a coach at certain stages?
Yeah. I think I wrote this article a couple of years ago, or a blog post with Barry O'Reilly, and it's called "Everybody Needs a Coach," right? And it's not just product managers. It's kind of cross-discipline or community, or however you want to describe it. But I think through coaching, if you do have that kind of learner and growth mindset, like a lot of product people do have, you want to keep learning and learning about yourself and improving your own skills. And coaching helps with that, right? It's another opportunity for growth, be it in technical skills or human skills or both. And I think also, kind of like I was sharing my story about how I kind of got to a certain level in my career, and I felt like I was kind of banging my head against it. There's a great book from an executive coach named Marshall Goldsmith, I think it is, and it's called "What Got You Here Won't Get You There." At a certain point, I think we realize that if we are going to continue to grow, we're going to need to make some kind of change, some kind of behavior change usually. So coaching, it's not required, but I think it's important. And I think if you can find coaching, be it peer coaching or professional coaching or executive coaching, whatever it might be, then I think it's a great opportunity. And yeah, I don't think you're always going to have a coach, but I think as you get further into your career, you kind of build like a team around you, to help you go in different directions and help you grow. And I think having a coach is a good member of your team.
Fantastic. We've gone through, I think, all of the questions that have been asked. So unless anyone adds anything more on YouTube, and we don't want to take up too much of your time, Kate, I was just do you want to give a quick plug to where people can find more stuff about you, writing, etc.? Do you tweet? Are you on Instagram? How do people follow along and devour all the things that you're putting out?
Yeah, thank you. So I have a website. I feel so vain saying this, but it's kateleto.com. And you can find a lot of my articles and blogs and talks there. I post on LinkedIn quite a bit, and I tweet. And I have, of course, the book that is available on Amazon. Oh, that's great. That's so nice. So you can read much more about some of the different techniques in hiring and building human skills into hiring in the book, obviously. And the book actually has some activities that you can use to build your own human skills and to kind of grow and use hiring as an agent for change, be it individually or with your team or your organization. So that's a good one. And I'm on Medium as well. So I post my blogs on Medium.
Awesome. Cool.
I would definitely say if you get the opportunity to read the book, it's really interesting. It's shown as a full case study with loads of really cool stuff woven in. It's really, really interesting. Normally, when I read product management books, I've got loads of questions bubbling around in my head, but it's really clearly written.
Thank you very much.
And I'd also add that, I know everybody's on Zoom calls all day, and it can seem a bit much, and it might seem like a bit overwhelming to be doing reading in the evening or something, but it's a really easy read. It's only you can get through it in an hour, and there's a lot of there's a lot of good info packed into that time.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's from Sense and Respond Press, and they focus on shorter books. So it's something that if you were commuting, you could read on your commute. So Thank you very much, guys. That's really nice to hear. You've made my day.
Well, you've made ours. Thank you so much for spending time with us.
Thank you, guys. This was a lot of fun. Thanks very much. And thanks for all the questions. Those were really good questions.
I should say that Ben pointed out that there's a slight delay between what we're seeing in the broadcast studio and what's on YouTube. So, like, you know, the election scandal that may be happening but clearly isn't. Hopefully, it didn't affect any of the results of the polls. But the parallels was too good for me to not mention it. So sorry if anyone did vote and Kate ended up talking about something different. But I don't think it was that clear cut.
Well, if all else fails, maybe we'll do a recount later.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and we'll put $1 million bounty up for any inaccurate results found.
Yeah, exactly. All right, guys.
Amazing.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks all. Bye.
Bye.